Captain Voss. How delightful to see a submarine expert gracing us with her presence on a proper warship. Tell me, did you need a map to find the surface, or did your crew just point you toward daylight? The laughter erupted instantly. 200 personnel packed into the briefing space of USS Vanguard, and every single one of them heard Admiral Robert Kingsley deliver that line with the precision of a surgical strike. Officers snickered behind clipboards. Junior enlisted shifted uncomfortably near the bulkheads. Even the Marine sentry by the hatch allowed himself the ghost of a smirk before snapping back to parade rest. The morning sun blazed through the portholes of the carrier's flag bridge, casting harsh shadows across rows of dress whites and service khakis. Somewhere below decks, the rhythm of flight operations thundered through steel. Catapults launching hornets into the South China Sea, arresting cables catching returns, the endless industrial symphony of a nuclear-powered city at sea. Captain Lydia Voss stood 3 feet from the Admiral's podium. She did not flinch. She did not speak. Her eyes, pale gray, steady as ballast, held on Kingsley's face for exactly 2 seconds before dropping to a regulation parade rest position. Hands clasped behind her back, spine straight. The only movement was the subtle rise and fall of her chest. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. The combat breathing pattern was so slight that no one noticed. No one except the chief petty officer standing near the corner coffee station, a grizzled veteran with 30 years of deck plates under his boots, and the kind of eyes that missed nothing. Chief Red Sullivan had seen that breathing pattern before. Bosnia, Iraq, the Gulf. It was the kind of respiratory control they drilled into you in survival schools, the kind that kept your heart rate down when everything around you was fire and chaos. He watched Voss's shoulders, no tension, no tremor, and his own pulse kicked up a notch. Submariners did not get rattled easily, but this woman was not just calm, she was waiting. Kingsley pivoted back to his briefing slides, dismissing Voss with a wave that might as well have been swatting a fly. Now, as I was saying before our underwater guest arrived, the operational theater in the Spratlys requires coordination between surface assets and air superiority. Submarine participation in this phase is minimal at best, which is why Captain Voss will be observing rather than contributing to strategic planning. Another ripple of chuckles. Executive Officer Patricia Hartwell, standing to Kingsley's left, allowed herself a thin smile. She was a striking woman in her late 40s, with the kind of polish that came from years navigating the politics of flag ranks. Her uniform was immaculate. Her expression was ice wrapped in velvet. When she glanced at Voss, there was something almost pitying in her gaze, the look you might give a stray dog that wandered into the wrong neighborhood. Voss did not look back. Her focus had shifted to the tactical displays mounted along the bulkhead, charts of the South China Sea, depth contours, shipping lanes. Her eyes tracked across the data with the speed of someone reading a language they had spoken since birth. She noted the patrol boxes, the exclusion zones, the gaps in coverage where a vessel running silent could slip through undetected. Her right hand, still clasped behind her back, moved fractionally, thumb pressing against the edge of her wristwatch, a Casio G-Shock so worn that the bezel had lost its factory finish. 24-hour time, set to Zulu. The habit of someone who lived by Greenwich Mean and operational tempo. Red Sullivan caught that too. He took a sip of his coffee, black, thick as bunker fuel, and made a mental note. Submariners always ran Zulu time. Always. Even when they were standing on a carrier deck under a tropical sun. It was not just habit, it was identity. Kingsley advanced to the next slide. Our primary concern is maintaining freedom of navigation while deterring hostile reconnaissance. The carrier strike group will hold position here. He tapped the screen with a laser pointer, while coordinating with allied assets in the region. Questions? A hand went up. Lieutenant Commander James Barker, the navigation officer, a wiry man with the kind of perpetual frown that suggested chronic skepticism. Admiral, what about subsurface contacts? We've had intermittent sonar readings near the Scarborough Shoal. Are we coordinating with Subpac for... Irrelevant, Kingsley cut him off. Submarine Force Pacific has their own command structure. We do not micromanage their operations, and they do not interfere with ours. Captain Voss is here as a courtesy, nothing more. Barker's frown deepened, but he nodded. Voss still said nothing. She had not spoken a single word since entering the briefing space 20 minutes earlier. When she had walked in, flanked by 2 junior officers from the air wing, Kingsley had made a show of checking his watch and muttering something about submarine time zones. The room had laughed then, too. Voss had simply taken her position near the back, hands behind her back, and settled into that unnerving stillness. Now, as Kingsley droned through intelligence assessments and fuel logistics, she remained a statue. The only sign of life was the slow, methodical breathing and the way her gaze occasionally drifted toward the portholes. Beyond the glass, the ocean stretched flat and endless. Somewhere beneath that blue skin, things moved in silence. The briefing dragged past the 30-minute mark. Kingsley loved the sound of his own authority, and he wielded PowerPoint slides like a man conducting an orchestra. Voss shifted her weight once, left foot to right, a microscopic adjustment that would have been invisible to anyone not watching for it. Red Sullivan was watching. He saw her glance down at her boots. Standard Navy issue, black leather polished to a mirror shine, but the laces were tied in a specific configuration. A bowline knot variation. He had seen SEAL team guys use that knot. He had also seen it in old submarine service manuals from the Cold War. It was a small thing, but small things added up. Hartwell stepped forward to brief on logistics. Her voice was crisp, efficient, and utterly devoid of warmth. Resupply operations will commence at 1400. All department heads are required to submit fuel and ordnance requests by noon. Exceptions will not be granted without flag-level approval. She paused, glancing at Voss with the kind of smile that did not reach her eyes. Captain Voss, I assume submarine logistics are somewhat simpler. After all, you spend most of your time rationing oxygen and hoping the recyclers hold out. Laughter again. Lighter this time, more uncertain. Some of the junior officers were starting to look uncomfortable. The pile-on was getting thick, and Voss was just standing there, absorbing it like armor plating. Red Sullivan set his coffee cup down. He had been in the Navy since before some of these kids were born, and he knew what public humiliation looked like. This was not hazing. This was something else. Calculated. Deliberate. Kingsley wanted Voss off balance, and Hartwell was running interference to make sure she stayed there. Voss finally moved. She unclasped her hands, reached into the cargo pocket of her uniform trousers, and pulled out a small notebook. Standard Navy issue, green cover, wire spiral binding. She flipped it open, scanned a page, and then closed it again. The whole gesture took maybe 5 seconds. But in those 5 seconds, Red Sullivan saw something that made his coffee go cold in his gut. The way she held the pen. Not like someone taking notes, like someone checking coordinates. Her grip was tactical. 3 fingers on the barrel, index finger extended along the side, thumb applying pressure from below. It was the same grip you used on a weapon when you needed to transition between fine motor control and gross motor action. He leaned back against the bulkhead and forced himself to keep breathing normally. This woman was not just a submarine commander, she was something else. And whatever game Kingsley thought he was playing, he did not know the board. The Admiral wrapped up the briefing with a flourish. Dismissed. Department heads remain for senior staff coordination. Captain Voss, you are excused. I am sure you have underwater matters to attend to. The room emptied slowly. Voss did not move immediately. She waited until the junior officers had filed out, until the space had cleared to just the flagstaff and a handful of department heads. Then she turned toward the hatch. As she passed Kingsley, she inclined her head. Not a bow, not submission, just the kind of professional acknowledgement you gave to a superior officer you did not particularly respect. Kingsley did not acknowledge her. He was already talking to Hartwell about fuel priorities and maintenance schedules. Red Sullivan watched Voss exit the compartment. She moved like someone who knew exactly where she was going. No hesitation, no uncertainty. When the hatch sealed behind her, he turned his attention back to the Admiral. Kingsley was smiling. That was the wrong response. If you just humiliated a submarine commander in front of 200 witnesses and she walked out of the room looking like she had just finished a chess move, you should not be smiling. You should be checking your 6. If you have ever been underestimated in a room full of people who thought they knew better, hit that like button right now. And if you believe the truth always surfaces no matter how deep it is buried, smash that thanks button to support stories about silent justice. The passageway outside the briefing space was a controlled chaos of personnel moving between watch stations. Voss walked without hurry, her boots striking the deck with the steady rhythm of a metronome. She passed a damage control locker, a berthing compartment, a ladder well leading down to the hangar bay. No one stopped her. No one questioned her presence. She had clearance to be here. Kingsley himself had authorized her visit as part of a joint operational assessment. What he did not know was that Voss had been authorized by someone significantly higher up the chain of command. Someone who did not wear stars on their collar but wielded influence that made admirals nervous. She descended 3 decks, moving through the arteries of the carrier with the confidence of someone who had memorized the layout before stepping aboard. At the O3 level, she paused near a secure communications space. The hatch was closed, guarded by a young seaman apprentice who looked barely old enough to vote. Voss pulled out her ID card, standard Navy Common Access card, photo and biometric chip, and held it up. The kid scanned it, frowned at his terminal, and then straightened. "Ma'am, you are cleared for access, but I need to log your entry. May I have your command affiliation?" USS Titan. Hull number Sierra Sierra November 795. The seaman typed, paused, and typed again. His frown deepened. "Ma'am, I am not showing that hull number in the registry. Are you sure?" "Check the classified database. Tier 3 access." The kid hesitated, then leaned over his keyboard and punched in a different query. Whatever came back made his face go pale. He stood up so fast his chair rolled backward into the bulkhead. "Ma'am, apologies, ma'am. You are cleared. I did not realize—" "No one does." Voss stepped past him into the communications space. The hatch sealed behind her with a hydraulic hiss. Inside, the compartment was tight and sterile. Racks of encrypted communication gear lined the bulkheads, each unit blinking with status lights. Voss moved to a specific console, entered a 12-digit alphanumeric code, and waited. The screen blinked twice, then displayed a single line of text. "Com sublant authenticated. Proceed." She typed rapidly, her fingers moving with the efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times. The message she sent was brief, 3 words. Phase 1 complete. The response came back in less than 10 seconds. Titan standing by. Confirm surface window. Voss checked her watch. 1420 Zulu. She typed again. 1800 local, starboard side, flag protocol. The screen blinked acknowledgement, then went dark. Voss cleared the console, erased her access logs, and exited the compartment. The seaman apprentice was still standing at rigid attention when she emerged. She gave him a nod. "Carry on." "Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am." She continued down the passageway. Somewhere above her, flight operations were ramping up for the afternoon cycle. The deck trembled as a Super Hornet slammed into the catapult shuttle. 30,000 pounds of thrust spooled up, and then the world shook as the aircraft launched into the blue. Voss did not look up. She had spent 18 years in the Navy, most of it submerged, and the noise of surface warfare had long since stopped impressing her. What impressed her was silence. The kind of silence that came from running a nuclear reactor 300 feet below the surface, moving through water like a ghost, listening to the ocean whisper its secrets. She reached the hangar bay and stepped out onto the vast open deck. The space was cavernous, large enough to swallow a football field. Aircraft were parked in tight rows, Hornets, Growlers, a pair of Hawkeyes with their radar domes folded. Maintenance crews swarmed over the machines, shouting instructions over the scream of turbines and the clang of tools. Voss moved along the starboard side, staying clear of the active work areas. No one paid her any attention. She was just another officer in a working uniform, unremarkable and unimportant. She found a quiet spot near a tool locker and leaned against the bulkhead. From here, she had a clear line of sight to the hangar bay elevator and the deck edge beyond. The ocean was visible through the massive opening, a strip of blue that stretched to the horizon. She pulled out her notebook again, flipped it open, and scanned the pages. To anyone watching, she was just reviewing notes. In reality, she was running through a mental checklist. Timing, positioning, contingencies. She had done this kind of operation before, but never on this scale. Never with this many witnesses. Her dog tags shifted under her collar as she moved. They were standard issue, stamped stainless steel, embossed with name, rank, social security number, blood type. But if someone looked closely, they would notice the serial number was not standard. It was alphanumeric, not numeric. And if someone checked that serial against the Navy personnel database, they would find nothing. Because Lydia Voss technically did not exist in the way most officers existed. She was a ghost asset, a strategic command operator, the kind of person whose records were sealed at levels that required presidential authorization to access. She had been operating in the shadows for 6 years. Joint operations with naval special warfare, classified missions in the Arctic, counter-proliferation taskings that never made the news, and now, this. Operation Integrity, a sting operation designed to catch a flag officer selling intelligence to foreign actors. Kingsley had no idea he was the target. He thought he was untouchable. Admirals always did. Footsteps approached from behind. Voss did not turn, but her hand moved fractionally toward the cargo pocket where she kept her tactical pen. The steps stopped 6 feet away, a voice, familiar, cautious. "Captain Voss?" She turned. Red Sullivan stood there, holding a styrofoam cup in each hand. He offered one. Figured you might need some fuel. It is a long walk from the briefing space to the hangar bay. Voss accepted the cup. Black coffee, still hot. She took a sip, nodded. Appreciate it, Chief. Sullivan did not leave. He stood beside her, looking out at the ocean. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, quietly, "Ma'am, I have been in the Navy since 1993. I have seen a lot of things, and I have seen exactly 3 people breathe the way you were breathing in that briefing." Voss did not respond. Sullivan continued. 2 of them were SEAL team operators. The third was a Marine Scout sniper. All 3 of them had been through some serious situations. The kind where you either learn to control your body or your body controls you. He paused. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you do not have to answer. But I am asking anyway. What are you really doing on this carrier? Voss met his gaze. For a moment, she considered deflecting. Standard operational security would dictate that she give him nothing. But Sullivan was not stupid. He had already seen too much. And sometimes, having one person on the inside who knew just enough could be the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Chief, if I told you that everything happening right now is exactly the way it is supposed to happen, would you believe me? Sullivan studied her face. Then he nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am, I would. Good. Because in about 3 hours, things are going to get interesting, and when they do, I need you to trust that I know what I am doing. Understood, ma'am. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it is worth, ma'am, the Admiral is a piece of work, but he is connected. If you are planning something, you better make sure it sticks, because if it does not, you are going to disappear into a hole so deep they will never find you. I know, Chief. I am counting on it. Sullivan left. Voss finished her coffee and crushed the cup, dropping it into a waste bin. She checked her watch again. 14:45 Zulu, just over 3 hours until the window. She moved toward the hangar bay elevator, taking the long route around the parked aircraft. As she walked, she reviewed the plan one more time. Kingsley would make his move soon. He always did. The man could not help himself. He was a predator, and predators needed to assert dominance. She was betting on that, betting that his ego would push him to escalate, to go one step further, to give her the opening she needed. She reached the edge of the hangar bay and stepped out onto a small observation platform overlooking the flight deck. The wind hit her immediately, hot, humid, tasting of salt and jet fuel. Below, the deck crew was preparing for another launch cycle. Yellow shirts guided aircraft into position. Red shirts loaded ordnance. The choreography was flawless, a machine made of humans moving in perfect synchronization. Voss watched for a moment, then turned her gaze to the ocean. Out there, invisible beneath the waves, USS Titan was holding station. 1,500 tons of steel and uranium, silent as death, waiting for her signal. She smiled. It was a small thing, barely visible, but it was there. The afternoon crawled forward. Voss moved through the carrier like a specter, avoiding the main passageways, staying out of sight. She did not want to give Kingsley any more ammunition. Not yet. At 15:30 Zulu, she received a message on her encrypted pager. Just a number. 17. Code for subject is moving. Kingsley was making his play, right on schedule. She made her way back to the berthing area assigned to visiting officers. It was a cramped compartment with 4 bunks, barely enough room to turn around. Her sea bag was stowed under the lowest rack, locked with a combination padlock. She knelt, unlocked it, and pulled out a single item, a folded uniform top. Service khakis, freshly pressed. She changed quickly, swapping her working uniform for the dress version. When she straightened, she looked like every other officer on the carrier. Regulation, professional, unremarkable. Except for the dog tags. She pulled them out from under her collar, letting them hang visible against her chest. The metal caught the fluorescent light, glinting. She stared at them for a moment, then tucked them back under her shirt. Not yet, but soon. At 1600 Zulu, the announcement came over the ship's intercom. Captain Voss, report to the flag bridge. Captain Voss, flag bridge. She had been expecting it. Kingsley was not done with her. He wanted one more round, one more chance to assert control. She left the berthing compartment and made her way up 3 decks. The flag bridge was quieter than the main briefing space, more intimate. Just a handful of personnel, Kingsley, Hartwell, Barker, and a couple of junior officers manning communication consoles. Voss stepped through the hatch and stood at attention. Kingsley did not look up from the tactical display he was studying. Captain Voss, thank you for joining us. I trust you have been keeping yourself entertained? Yes, sir. Excellent. He straightened, finally meeting her eyes. I have been reviewing the operational schedule, and it has come to my attention that your presence on this vessel serves no tactical purpose. You are not part of the strike group command structure. You are not coordinating with our submarine assets. In fact, I cannot seem to find any documentation explaining why you are here at all. Voss said nothing. Kingsley smiled. It was the kind of smile a shark might give a seal. So, I am going to make this simple. You are relieved of any duties aboard USS Vanguard. A helicopter is being prepped to transport you back to shore at 1800 local. You will remain in your berthing compartment until departure. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, sir. Hartwell stepped forward, her expression carefully neutral. Captain, before you go, I need to verify your security clearance. There have been some irregularities with your access logs. Voss turned to her. What kind of irregularities? You accessed a Tier 3 communications terminal earlier today. That terminal is restricted to flag-level personnel and certain intelligence assets. I need to confirm that you had proper authorization. I had authorization. From whom? That is classified. Hartwell's smile thinned. Captain, I am the executive officer of this carrier. If you accessed restricted systems without proper authorization, that is a serious breach of security protocol. I am going to need you to provide documentation, or I will have no choice but to confiscate your access credentials and initiate an investigation. Voss reached into her pocket and pulled out her CAC card. She held it up. You are welcome to scan it, Commander, but I promise you, the moment you flag my access in the system, you are going to get a very uncomfortable phone call from someone who outranks everyone in this room. Hartwell hesitated. Kingsley stepped in. Commander Hartwell, confiscate the card. If Captain Voss is operating outside proper channels, we need to lock her out immediately. Hartwell reached for the card. Voss handed it over without resistance. Barker, standing near the navigation console, frowned. Admiral, with all due respect, if Captain Voss has Tier 3 access, that means she is operating under a special access program. We might be stepping into something we do not have visibility on. Nonsense. Kingsley waved him off. She is a submarine commander. Submarine commanders do not have SAP clearances. This is either a bureaucratic error or she is lying. Either way, we are shutting it down. Hartwell scanned the card. Her terminal beeped. She scanned it again. The beep turned into a harsh buzz. Red text flashed across the screen. Access denied. Flag for security review. Kingsley leaned over her shoulder. What does that mean? It means the card is flagged. Someone at NAVC or higher put a lock on her credentials. I cannot even see her service record without elevated authorization. Kingsley's face darkened. Fine. Confiscate her communication devices as well. Phone, pager, anything with a transmitter. If she wants to play games, we will play by my rules. Voss unclipped her pager from her belt and handed it over. Then her phone. Kingsley took them both and set them on the console. Captain Voss, you are now restricted to your berthing compartment until departure. If you leave that space for any reason other than an emergency, you will be placed under arrest. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Good. Dismissed. Voss turned and walked out. The hatch sealed behind her. The moment it did, Kingsley let out a long breath. That woman is a problem. Hartwell nodded. Agreed. But if she really does have SAP clearance, we need to be careful. We do not want to trigger an Inspector General investigation. She does not have SAP clearance. She is bluffing. And even if she is not, I have friends at the Pentagon who can make problems disappear. Kingsley tapped the tactical display. Make sure that helicopter is ready at 1800. I want her off my ship. Yes, sir. Down in the berthing compartment, Voss lay on her bunk and stared at the overhead. Her watch read 17:15 Zulu. 45 minutes until the window. She closed her eyes and focused on her breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. The world shrank to just the rhythm of her lungs and the distant hum of the carrier's reactors. Somewhere below her, deep in the machine spaces, 20,000 personnel were going about their jobs. None of them knew what was about to happen. None of them would see it coming. At 17:45, she stood up, smoothed her uniform, checked her bootlaces. Everything was in order. She left the berthing compartment and made her way toward the hangar bay. No one stopped her. No one questioned her. Security on a carrier was tight, but it relied on access control and cameras. Once you were inside the perimeter, you could move with surprising freedom as long as you looked like you belonged. She reached the hangar bay elevator just as it descended from the flight deck. The massive platform groaned to a stop and she stepped onto it. The deck edge was just 50 feet away, open to the ocean. The sun was lower now, casting long shadows across the water. She walked to the edge and looked down. 300 feet of steel hull dropped to the waterline. The ocean was calm, dark blue, shading to black in the depths. And then she saw it. A disturbance in the water. Not much. Just a ripple, a change in the surface tension. Most people would not have noticed. But Voss knew what she was looking for. She watched as the ripple grew, as the water began to boil and churn. And then, slowly, impossibly, the ocean gave birth to a monster. USS Titan broke the surface like a leviathan rising from the deep. Water cascaded off its hull, a torrent of white foam and spray. The submarine was massive, over 300 feet long, black as midnight, its conning tower bristling with antennas and masts. It surfaced with the kind of controlled violence that only a nuclear-powered attack submarine could manage. Ballast tanks blowing, dive planes angled, the whole machine defying gravity through sheer engineering will. And on the conning tower, as the spray cleared, a flag unfurled, not the national ensign, not a battle flag, a command flag, gold and blue with a single star in the center, the personal flag of Captain Lydia Voss, commanding officer USS Titan. The carrier's deck erupted into chaos. Alarms blared. Personnel poured out of hatches, pointing, shouting. On the flag bridge, Admiral Kingsley stared through the windows, his face draining of color. Hartwell stood beside him, mouth open, unable to form words. And on the hangar bay elevator, Lydia Voss stood at attention, watching her command rise from the depths. Her face was calm, her breathing was steady, and for the first time since stepping aboard USS Vanguard, she allowed herself to smile. The flag bridge descended into pandemonium. Kingsley stumbled backward from the window, his hand gripping the edge of the tactical display console so hard his knuckles went white. Hartwell stood frozen, her mouth working soundlessly as she tried to process what her eyes were telling her. Barker was the first to recover, leaning over the communication panel and keying the radio. USS Titan, this is USS Vanguard flag bridge. Identify your intentions. Oh. You are operating inside our security perimeter without authorization. Respond immediately. The radio crackled. A voice came back. Calm, professional, utterly unbothered. Vanguard flag, this is USS Titan Actual. We are operating under authorized command. Stand by for authentication. Barker's face went pale. They are transmitting authentication codes, flag level codes. Admiral, they have clearance we did not even know existed. Kingsley found his voice. It came out as a rasp. Get me comm sub pack on the line. Now. I want to know who authorized a nuclear submarine to surface inside my carrier group without notification. Sir, they are not responding to standard channels. The codes they are transmitting are routed through Naval Intelligence and NAVC. I cannot even see the classification level without elevated access. Down on the hangar bay elevator, Voss remained perfectly still. She could feel 200 pairs of eyes on her. Deck crew, maintenance personnel, junior officers. Everyone who had witnessed her humiliation just hours ago was now watching USS Titan hold station 200 yards off the carrier's starboard side, her command flag snapping in the wind. The submarine's hull sat low in the water, black and menacing, her conning tower rising like a dorsal fin. From this angle, Voss could see the lookouts on the sail, could see the weapons hatches sealed tight, could see the reactor exhaust venting steam into the tropical air. Red Sullivan pushed through the crowd gathering near the elevator. He stopped 6 feet from Voss, his eyes moving from her face to the submarine and back again. Then slowly he came to attention and rendered a salute. It was sharp, crisp, and utterly sincere. Voss returned it. Sullivan held the salute for 3 full seconds before dropping his hand. Captain, permission to speak freely? Granted, Chief. Ma'am, I have been in the Navy for 32 years. I have seen a lot of things, but I have never seen a submarine commander surface a boat in the middle of a carrier strike group just to make a point. So whatever you are doing, it is either the most brilliant tactical move I have ever witnessed, or you are about to get court-martialed into oblivion. Voss allowed herself a small smile. Let's find out which one it is, Chief. What do you think happens next? Drop your predictions in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe so you do not miss the twist that is about to unfold. Footsteps pounded down the ladder well. Hartwell emerged onto the hangar deck, her face flushed with fury and something that looked uncomfortably like panic. She was followed by 2 master-at-arms. the Navy's equivalent of military police, both of them looking deeply uncomfortable about whatever orders they had just been given. Hartwell marched straight toward Voss, her uniform still immaculate but her composure fraying at the edges. "Captain Voss, you are under arrest for unauthorized access to classified systems, failure to follow lawful orders, and conduct unbecoming an officer. You will surrender your credentials and submit to custody immediately." Voss did not move. "On whose authority, Commander?" "Admiral Kingsley's authority. And mine. You have compromised operational security by summoning an unauthorized vessel into our protected waters. That submarine," she jabbed a finger toward USS Titan, "has no business being here, and you have no business commanding it to surface without clearance from the carrier group commander. Commander Hartwell, I recommend you verify my clearance level before you proceed." "I already tried. Your records are sealed, which tells me you are either operating outside proper channels or you are lying about your credentials. Either way, you are coming with us." Hartwell turned to the two master-at-arms. "Petty officers, take her into custody." Neither of them moved. The senior of the two, a first-class petty officer with a face like weathered granite, shifted his weight uncomfortably. "Commander, with respect, we cannot detain a flag-level officer without written orders from the Admiral himself. If Captain Voss has clearance we cannot verify, we need to wait for proper authorization before—" "I am giving you a direct order. Ma'am, we need it in writing. That is the regulation." Hartwell's jaw tightened. She reached for Voss's arm, fingers closing around the sleeve of her uniform top. "Fine. Then I will detain her myself until the paperwork catches up. Captain, you are coming with me to the brig. If you resist, I will have you dragged." She pulled, hard. The fabric of Voss's uniform sleeve bunched and twisted as Hartwell yanked her forward. The motion was violent enough that the carefully tucked cuff tore free from Voss's wrist, riding up her forearm in a rumpled mess of khaki cloth. And there, exposed to the blazing afternoon sun and 200 witnesses, was the tattoo. It was not large, maybe 3 inches across, but it was unmistakable. A submarine warfare insignia, the Dolphins, rendered in black ink with the kind of precision that spoke of professional military work. Beneath the Dolphins, a hull number, SSN 795. And wrapped around the entire design, a phrase in Latin: silent, vigilant, deadly. The crowd went silent, not the kind of silence that comes from shock, the kind that comes from recognition, from understanding that something fundamental has just shifted. Red Sullivan's eyes went wide. The two master-at-arms stared. Even Hartwell froze, her fingers still gripping Voss's sleeve, her face draining of color as her brain caught up with what her eyes were seeing. A voice cut through the silence, old, gravelly, carrying the weight of 3 decades at sea. "Holy cow! That is not just a submarine warfare pin. That is a strategic command insignia." Everyone turned. Chief Petty Officer Sullivan stepped forward, his gaze locked on the tattoo. "Ma'am, I have only seen that design twice in my entire career. Once on a SEAL team commander who ran black operations in the Baltic. Once on a submarine skipper who conducted deterrent patrols in the Arctic during the Cold War. Both of them were classified so far above my pay grade I was not even supposed to know their names." He looked up at Voss, and there was something like awe in his eyes. "That hull number, SSN 795, that is USS Titan, Virginia-class fast attack, Block 4, one of the most advanced submarines in the fleet." Voss did not pull her arm away. She let the tattoo sit there in the open air, visible to everyone. Hartwell finally released her grip, stumbling backward like she had just touched something radioactive. "This does not prove anything. Tattoos can be faked. Anyone can get ink done." "Check the serial number, Commander." Voss's voice was calm, cold. "The hull number on that tattoo matches the submarine currently holding station off our starboard side. And if you pull up the Naval Vessel Registry, the classified section, the one that requires Tier 3 access, you will find exactly one commanding officer listed for USS Titan, Captain Lydia Ann Voss, service number Sierra Victor 7, 329 Kilo, commissioned 18 years ago, currently assigned to Submarine Development Squadron 5 under Naval Special Warfare Command." Barker's voice crackled over the hangar bay speakers. He had patched into the ship's intercom from the flag bridge. "All personnel, attention on deck. We have confirmation from Comm Sublant. Captain Voss is authenticated as commanding officer of USS Titan. Repeat, Captain Voss is authenticated." The effect was instantaneous. Every sailor within earshot snapped to attention. It was not a conscious decision. It was muscle memory drilled into them from boot camp. When a submarine commander's credentials were authenticated, you stood at attention. Period. Sullivan saluted again. The two master-at-arms followed suit. Hartwell stood there, her hands trembling, her face a mask of confusion and dawning horror. And then, from the direction of the flight deck, a new sound. Footsteps, multiple sets, heavy boots striking the deck in perfect synchronization. A group of officers appeared at the top of the ladder well, not Vanguard crew, not carrier personnel. They wore the service dress blues of submarine force officers, their uniforms bearing the gleam of dolphins and the ribbons of combat deployments. At the head of the group was a captain, tall, graying at the temples, with the kind of presence that made junior officers instinctively straighten their spines. He descended to the hangar bay, his gaze sweeping the crowd before settling on Voss. Then he came to attention and rendered the sharpest salute Voss had seen all day. "Captain Voss, Captain Howard Pierce, Destroyer Squadron 12. I was ordered to provide tactical support for your operation. USS Titan's authentication came through 5 minutes ago. The Admiral has been informed." Voss returned the salute. "Thank you, Captain Pierce. Status of the cordon?" "In place, we have 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers forming a perimeter. No traffic in or out without clearance. NCIS agents are inbound via helo. ETA 12 minutes. Hartwell found her voice. It came out as a strangled whisper. "NCIS? Why is Naval Criminal Investigative Service involved in an operational assessment?" Pierce turned to her, and his expression was granite. "Because, Commander, this was never an operational assessment. This was a sting operation, and you just became a person of interest." The hangar bay erupted into chaos again. Personnel scrambled to clear the space. The two master-at-arms moved to flank Hartwell, their hands resting on their sidearms, not drawing but ready. Hartwell looked from Pierce to Voss, her composure shattering like glass. "This is absurd. I have done nothing wrong. I am the executive officer of this carrier. You cannot just—" "Commander Hartwell, I suggest you remain silent until NCIS arrives." Voss stepped forward, and for the first time since boarding USS Vanguard, she let the full weight of her authority show in her voice. "Because anything you say right now is going to be recorded, analyzed, and used to determine whether you are going to spend the next 20 years in a federal prison, or whether you are going to cooperate and possibly salvage some fragment of your career." Hartwell's mouth opened, closed. She looked around wildly, as if searching for an ally, someone who would step in and make this nightmare stop. No one moved. Red Sullivan stood at attention, his face carefully neutral. The two master-at-arms had their hands on their weapons now, not quite drawn but no longer passive. Captain Pierce pulled out a handheld radio and keyed it. "Flag Bridge, this is Pierce. Secure Admiral Kingsley's location. He is not to leave the carrier. Repeat, do not allow the Admiral to depart." Barker's voice came back, shaky and uncertain. "Sir, the Admiral is already headed for the flight deck. He ordered a helo prepped for immediate departure. He said it was an urgent briefing at 7th Fleet headquarters." "Negative. Ground that helo. Use force if necessary. This is a federal investigation, and Admiral Kingsley is a material witness at minimum." There was a pause, then quietly, "Understood, sir. We are locking down the flight deck now." Voss pulled her sleeve down, covering the tattoo again. She turned to face the crowd that had gathered. 200 faces, maybe more. Sailors, petty officers, junior officers. All of them staring at her like she had just walked out of a classified file and into their reality. She took a breath. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Then she spoke, and her voice carried across the hangar bay with the clarity of a bell. "You are probably wondering what just happened. So let me explain. 72 hours ago, I was tasked by Naval Intelligence to conduct an undercover operation aboard USS Vanguard. The objective was simple: identify and apprehend a group of senior officers who have been selling classified intelligence to foreign actors. Specifically, operational plans for carrier strike group movements in the South China Sea, submarine patrol routes, and encryption protocols for secure communications." The crowd shifted. Whispers rippled through the ranks. Voss continued. "Admiral Robert Kingsley is the primary suspect. For the past 6 months, he has been leaking information in exchange for financial compensation funneled through offshore accounts. But he was not working alone. Executive Officer Patricia Hartwell provided him with access to classified databases. Lieutenant Commander James Barker altered navigation logs to cover up unauthorized transmissions. Together, they compromised operational security at a level that put every member of this carrier strike group at risk." Hartwell's face was white. "This is nonsense. I have never leaked anything. I have served this Navy for 23 years. And for the last 6 months, you have been accessing Tier 3 communication systems outside your authorization window, 47 times to be exact. Each time, you downloaded encrypted files and transferred them to an external device. We have the logs, we have the timestamps, and we have the decryption keys you used, which were provided to you by Admiral Kingsley. You cannot prove that. Actually, Commander, I can, because every single access you made was monitored by naval intelligence. Every file you touched was flagged. Every transmission you sent was recorded. You thought you were covering your tracks by using Admiral Kingsley's credentials, but all you did was build a paper trail that leads directly back to both of you. Voss turned to Pierce. Captain, the evidence package? Pierce pulled a tablet from his cargo pocket and handed it to her. Voss activated the screen, pulled up a series of files and held it up for the crowd to see. This is a communication log from USS Vanguard's secure server, dated 3 weeks ago. At 22:15 Zulu, someone accessed the operational plans for Carrier Strike Group 5 and transmitted them to an external IP address registered in Singapore. The access credentials used were Admiral Kingsley's. But the physical terminal used was in the executive officer's stateroom. She swiped to the next file. This is a financial record from a bank in the Cayman Islands. It shows a deposit of $250,000 into an account registered to a shell corporation. That corporation is owned by a holding company. That holding company is owned by Admiral Kingsley's brother-in-law. The deposit was made 6 hours after the intelligence leak. Another swipe. This is a video feed from the carrier's internal security cameras. It shows Executive Officer Hartwell entering the Admiral's stateroom at 21:45 Zulu on the night of the leak. She left at 2300. In between, encrypted files were transferred from the carrier's server to a portable drive. Hartwell was shaking now. You have been spying on us. This entire operation is illegal. You cannot use evidence obtained through a lawful investigation authorized by the Secretary of the Navy and conducted under the supervision of Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Every piece of evidence was obtained legally, every warrant was signed, every access was logged. You are not being framed, Commander. You are being caught. The sound of rotor blades cut through the air. 2 Seahawk helicopters appeared over the carrier's flight deck, descending rapidly toward the landing zone. Voss watched them approach, then turned back to Hartwell. Those are NCIS agents. In approximately 8 minutes, you are going to be placed under arrest. You have 2 choices. You can cooperate, provide testimony, and possibly negotiate a reduced sentence. Or you can remain silent and spend the next 2 decades in a military prison while your co-conspirators cut deals and leave you holding the bag. Hartwell's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the deck, her back against a tool locker, her face buried in her hands. One of the master-at-arms moved to help her up, but Pierce waved him off. Let her sit. She is not going anywhere. Voss handed the tablet back to Pierce and pulled out her dog tags. She held them up, letting the metal catch the light. The serial number was clearly visible now. Alphanumeric, non-standard, the kind of identifier that only existed in classified databases. You asked why I stayed silent, Admiral. She looked up toward the flag bridge, knowing Kingsley was watching through the windows. I wore your contempt like armor. For 72 hours, I let you believe I was weak. I let you dismiss me. I let you humiliate me in front of your crew, because predators hunt best when their prey feels safe. She paused, letting the words sink in. You thought I was just a submarine commander who would fold under pressure. You thought you could banish me, erase me, make me disappear. But I was not here for your approval. I was here to let you bury yourself. Every insult you threw at me gave you confidence. Every dismissal made you careless. And careless traitors leave evidence. The helicopters touched down on the flight deck. Agents in black tactical gear poured out, moving with the precision of a SWAT team. Pierce keyed his radio. All units execute. Secure Admiral Kingsley, Executive Officer Hartwell, and Lieutenant Commander Barker. Use minimum necessary force. Voss continued, her voice cutting through the rotor wash. You sold intelligence that endangered every sailor in this strike group. You compromised operations that took years to plan. You put American lives at risk for money, and you thought you were untouchable because you wore stars on your collar. But rank does not make you immune to justice. It just makes your fall longer. 2 NCIS agents reached the hangar bay and moved directly toward Hartwell. One of them pulled out a set of restraints. Commander Patricia Hartwell, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit espionage, unauthorized disclosure of classified information, and violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. You have the right to remain silent. The Miranda warning faded into background noise as more agents swarmed the carrier. Voss watched them move, efficient and relentless. This was the consequence cascade she had been building toward. Immediate arrests, personal destruction, professional annihilation. the machinery of military justice grinding into motion, unstoppable now that it had been activated. On the flag bridge, Admiral Kingsley was surrounded. 4 agents, weapons drawn, ordering him to place his hands on the console. He complied, his face a mask of rage and disbelief. One of the agents snapped cuffs onto his wrists and began reading his rights. The radio traffic was a blur of codes and confirmations. Pierce coordinated from the hangar bay, his voice steady as he directed the operation. Barker was taken into custody in the navigation center. He did not resist. He just stood there, staring at the deck, his career evaporating around him like steam. 3 suspects, 3 arrests, all within 15 minutes of USS Titan's surfacing. Voss turned to Hartwell, who was being lifted to her feet by the NCIS agents. "Commander, you still have a choice. We have evidence linking you to 47 unauthorized accesses. We have financial records showing deposits into accounts you control. We have video of you entering the Admiral's stateroom on the night of multiple leaks, but what we do not have is your testimony. If you cooperate, if you provide details about the network Kingsley was working with, we can recommend leniency. If you do not, you are going to prison for a very long time." Hartwell looked at her, and for a moment there was something like hatred in her eyes. Then it crumbled into exhaustion. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Names, dates, how the money was moved, who else was involved. You are going to sit down with NCIS, and you are going to give them every detail. And if you lie, if you hold back, the deal is off." Hartwell nodded weakly. One of the agents guided her toward the helicopter, her hands cuffed behind her back. Barker was brought out next, his face pale, his eyes hollow. He did not look at Voss. He did not look at anyone. He just shuffled forward like a man walking to his execution. And then, Kingsley. They brought him down from the flag bridge in full view of the assembled crew. His uniform was rumpled now, his face flushed with fury. He saw Voss standing near the hangar bay elevator and jerked toward her, straining against the agents holding his arms. "You have no authority here. This is my carrier. I am a flag officer of the United States Navy, and you are a nobody, a ghost. You do not exist." Voss met his gaze, and her voice was ice. "You are right, Admiral. I do not exist. Not in the way you understand existence. I am the officer they send when the system fails. When corruption runs so deep that normal channels cannot touch it. I am the consequence you never saw coming. And now, you are going to spend the rest of your life regretting every word you said to me." Kingsley spat a curse, but the agents dragged him forward. They loaded him onto the helicopter, securing him in a seat with restraints designed for high-risk prisoners. Hartwell and Barker were already aboard, separated by agents, staring at nothing. The rotor spun up. The Seahawk lifted off, banking hard to starboard, carrying its cargo of broken careers toward the mainland and the court-martial that awaited them. This is what justice looks like. If this story moved you, hit that share button and spread the word. And stick around for what comes next, because Lydia Voss is not done yet. The hangar bay slowly returned to normal, personnel dispersed, returning to their duties with the kind of stunned silence that follows a natural disaster. Red Sullivan approached Voss, his expression somewhere between respect and disbelief. "Captain, I have been in the Navy for 32 years, and I have never seen anything like that. You just took down a flag officer in front of his entire command. That is either the bravest thing I have ever witnessed or the craziest. Both, Chief. Definitely both." Pierce walked over, tablet in hand. "Captain Voss, we have secure communications standing by. Sublant wants a debrief, and the Secretary of the Navy is requesting a call within the hour. Also, 7th Fleet is asking if you need additional security for USS Titan. There are concerns about retaliation from elements still loyal to Kingsley. Tell Sublant I will debrief from Titan once we are back at depth. Tell the Secretary I will call as soon as I am in secure comms, and tell 7th Fleet that USS Titan does not need security. Anyone who wants to retaliate can try. They will not get close enough to matter." Pierce smiled. It was the kind of smile that suggested he believed her. "Understood, Captain. One more thing. The Carrier Strike Group commander is being flown in from Yokosuka to take temporary command of USS Vanguard. He is asking if you can remain on station for another 48 hours to assist with the transition." "Negative. Titan has a patrol schedule to maintain. We were already late when we surfaced for this operation. We need to be back on mission within the next 6 hours. I will pass that along." Pierce hesitated, then extended his hand. "For what it is worth, Captain, what you did today is going to ripple through the Navy for years. Kingsley had connections. He had allies. People are going to be very uncomfortable knowing that there is an officer out there who can operate outside normal channels and bring down flag-level personnel. You just made yourself a lot of enemies. Voss shook his hand. Good. Let them be uncomfortable. Maybe it will keep them honest. She walked back to the edge of the hangar bay and looked out at USS Titan. The submarine was preparing to dive, her lookouts descending into the sail, her hatches sealing one by one. The command flag was still flying, a small defiant banner against the blue sky. Voss pulled out her dog tags one more time, ran her thumb across the serial number, then tucked them back under her uniform. Time to go home. She keyed her radio. Titan, this is Voss. Prepare to dive. I am returning via fast boat. Have the deck crew ready to receive me in 10 minutes. The response was immediate. Aye, Captain. Standing by. A small rigid-hull inflatable boat was lowered from the carrier's boat deck, piloted by two sailors who looked both honored and terrified to be ferrying a submarine commander. Voss climbed aboard and they motored out toward Titan. The ocean was calm, the sun beginning its descent toward the horizon. By the time they reached the submarine, the last of the lookouts had disappeared below. Voss climbed the ladder to the sail, her boots finding the familiar metal rungs, her hands gripping the rails. She reached the top, stepped onto the bridge, and looked back at USS Vanguard one last time. The carrier sat massive and silent, a floating city of steel and aircraft. Somewhere inside, 3 careers were ending in flames. Somewhere inside, 200 sailors were trying to process what they had just witnessed. And somewhere inside, the seeds of institutional change were being planted. New protocols, new oversight, new accountability. Voss descended into the submarine. The hatch sealed above her with a heavy clang. The world went dark, lit only by red battle lanterns and the glow of instrumentation. She moved through the narrow passageways to the control room, where her crew was waiting. The officer of the deck snapped to attention. Captain on deck. As you were. Officer of the deck. Take us down. Make your depth 300 feet, course 180, ahead standard. Aye, Captain. Dive. Make your depth 300 feet. The submarine tilted forward, ballast tanks flooded. USS Titan slipped beneath the waves like a ghost returning to shadow. Within 60 seconds, they were gone from the surface world, visible only as a fading signature on sonar screens. Voss moved to her stateroom, a cramped compartment barely large enough for a bunk and a desk. She sat down, pulled out a ruggedized tablet, and activated the encrypted communication system. A message was waiting for her, just a single line of text. Phase 2, Pacific Theater. Tower 4 sends regards. She stared at the message for a long moment. Tower 4, Arctic Command, the designation for a classified intelligence unit operating out of Greenland and Alaska responsible for monitoring submarine activity in the polar regions. If they were reaching out, it meant something big was moving, something that required her specific skill set. She typed a reply. Received. ETA to operational area? The response came back within seconds. 72 hours. Details to follow via secure channel. Voss closed the tablet and leaned back against the bulkhead. 72 hours. 3 days to transit from the South China Sea to wherever Tower 4 needed her. 3 days to rest, refit, and prepare for whatever nightmare was waiting in the Arctic. She closed her eyes and focused on her breathing. 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds out. Somewhere above her, USS Vanguard was already implementing changes. Security protocols were being rewritten, access logs were being audited, personnel were being questioned, reassigned, vetted. The Titan protocols, they were calling them. A comprehensive overhaul of how the Navy handled classified intelligence, how it monitored senior officers, how it created channels for whistleblowers and investigators to operate without being crushed by the weight of rank and politics. It would not fix everything. Corruption was a hydra. Cut off one head and 2 more grew back, but it was a start. It was a message. It was proof that no one was untouchable, no matter how many stars they wore. In her stateroom, Voss opened a small footlocker bolted to the deck. Inside was a collection of personal items. A challenge coin from her first submarine command, a photograph of her commissioning ceremony, a folded flag from a shipmate's funeral, and at the bottom, wrapped in oilcloth, a set of dog tags. Not hers, someone else's. Someone who had died in the line of duty, whose name was classified, whose sacrifice would never be publicly acknowledged. She picked up the dog tags, held them for a moment, then placed them back in the locker. Someday, maybe there would be a memorial. Someday, the names of the silent warriors would be spoken aloud, but not today. Today, there was only the mission. Only the patrol, only the endless dark of the deep ocean and the knowledge that somewhere, someone was counting on her to be ready. The intercom crackled. "Captain, we have secure comms standing by from Subland. Admiral requesting immediate contact." Voss stood, smoothed her uniform, and moved to the communications shack. She put on a headset and keyed the microphone. Subland, this is Voss. Go ahead." The Admiral's voice was gruff but not unkind. "Voss, I just got off the phone with the Secretary. He wants you to know that Operation Integrity is being classified at the highest levels. Everything that happened today is going to be buried under so many layers of classification that most people will never know it occurred. Kingsley, Hartwell, and Barker will be court-martialed in closed proceedings. No media, no public record, just a quiet end to 3 careers." "Understood, sir. What about the carrier crew? 200 people witnessed the arrests. They are being debriefed and reminded of their security obligations. Anyone who talks faces prosecution. It is not ideal, but it is necessary. We cannot afford to let this become a public scandal. The Navy's reputation is already fragile. A flag officer selling intelligence to foreign actors would be catastrophic." Voss felt a spike of anger but kept her voice level. "With respect, sir, the Navy's reputation should not come before accountability. Kingsley endangered lives. He deserves to be publicly held responsible." "I agree with you, Captain, but I do not make the rules. I just enforce them. For what it is worth, the changes you initiated are real. The Titan protocols are being implemented fleet-wide. You did good work. Now it is time to move on." "Aye, sir. What about Tower 4? "They will brief you directly. All I know is they have a situation developing in the Arctic, and they specifically requested you. Something about a Russian submarine that went dark 3 weeks ago and just reappeared near the Lomonosov Ridge. They think it is carrying something we need to verify." Voss's pulse quickened. "Verify how?" "That is above my clearance, Captain. Tower 4 will explain when you reach the operational area. Good luck, and Voss, stay safe. You made a lot of enemies today, not just Kingsley's allies. There are people in the Pentagon who do not like the precedent you just set. They are going to be watching you very closely." "Let them watch, sir. I have nothing to hide." "Famous last words, Captain. Subland out." The line went dead. Voss removed the headset and sat in the dim glow of the communications equipment. Around her, USS Titan hummed with the rhythm of controlled power. Reactor cooling pumps, air recyclers, the faint vibration of the propulsor driving them through the ocean at 15 knots. This was home. This was where she belonged. In the dark, in the silence, hunting. She stood and returned to the control room. The crew was efficient, professional, moving through their duties with the choreography of long practice. The officer of the deck glanced at her. "Captain, we are on course. Depth 300 feet, all systems nominal." "Very well. Maintain current course and speed. I will be in my stateroom. Call me if anything changes." "Aye, Captain." She descended one more level, back to her stateroom, and locked the hatch behind her. The tablet was still sitting on the desk, the encrypted message still glowing on the screen. "Tower 4 sends regards." She pulled up a map of the Arctic Ocean, traced the shipping lanes and patrol routes with her finger. The Lomonosov Ridge, a massive underwater mountain range stretching from Greenland to Siberia. Russian submarines loved to hide there, using the terrain to mask their acoustic signature. If one of them had gone dark and then reappeared, it meant they had been doing something they did not want anyone to see. Voss opened a drawer and pulled out a small metal case. Inside was a USB drive, encrypted and shielded. She plugged it into the tablet and entered a 16-character password. The screen flickered, then displayed a series of files, mission briefs, intelligence reports, target assessments, everything she needed to know about the Russian Northern Fleet and their submarine activity in the Arctic. She scrolled through the data, committing key details to memory: hull numbers, captain names, known patrol patterns. One file caught her attention: a photograph of a Russian Yasen-class submarine, sleek, deadly, armed with cruise missiles and torpedoes. The caption read, K550 Severodvinsk. Last known position, Barents Sea. Status, unknown. Voss zoomed in on the image. The submarine's hull was marked with unusual modifications, extended sonar arrays, additional hull penetrations for sensors. This was not a standard attack boat. This was a spy platform. She closed the file and leaned back. Tower 4 wanted her to verify something. That meant getting close. Close enough to positively identify whatever the Russians were hiding. Close enough to collect intelligence without being detected. Close enough to risk everything. She smiled. It was the kind of smile that would have made Admiral Kingsley very nervous if he had been there to see it. Justice was not loud, it was patient, and it was not done with her yet. The submarine dove deeper, chasing the darkness, chasing the mission, chasing the endless horizon of duty and sacrifice. Behind her, USS Vanguard faded into memory. Ahead, the Arctic waited, cold, silent, deadly, and Captain Lydia Voss was ready.
Every soldier carry a story that few ever hear. Listen with your heart. Thank you for staying and watching. Subscribe to MVB Story for more.